plug. Okay. So, uh, it's a story. You can believe it or not. I don't really give a shit. Last night I couldn't sleep because I was overthinking a lot of shit, and I had to be up real early this morning for a situation. Beside the point. But last night I was scrolling through YouTube in favorite pastime, and I saw this show on some forensic file shit about the Four Corners disease, right? And I thought, gee, I want to watch that, and because of my mother. Uh, Quick story: my father was a traveling salesman, if you will. Uh, he had to be out there uh, for a convention for wastewater treatment, and he normally goes around to the little cities, gets contacts, and invites people and all that bullshit. Do the classical salesman, what do you need, what can I do for you, kind of stuff. Shake people's hands, get phone numbers, drum up business the old school way, and they flew up there. So mom went with him because if they normally flew somewhere, mom went. If we drove, we all went. Kind of made a vacation out of wherever the hell we were going. Beside the point. So this Four Corners disease story. They went and to the little cities and made contacts. And one of the guys my father knew out there was Navajo Indian, or Indian of some sort. Who really gives a shit? Uh, that's not the story. He was Native American, nice guy. And they shook his hand and they were talking. I think they went out for breakfast or something. And Bill said, "Well, I'll see." Bill, my father said, "Well, I'll see you at the convention. Be sure to look me up. We'll probably do dinner." Well, he goes around to the different cities and then decides to make his way over to the convention hall at the hotel. And they meet up with the guy that they met with that morning. And my mom says, "Wow, he looks like he's about to die." He said he was fine in the morning, and then come on 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, he's going to die. Well, sure as shit, they had to call an ambulance and all sorts of craziness to get this guy out of the hospital. And my parents didn't know anything about Four Corners disease. So they were there. Mom started getting sick, and mom sent my father to go find the guy that was sick because he's probably worse off than she is. And that's when they found out the whole ambulance and whatever came to pick up the guy. So long story short, my parents decided to catch an earlier flight back home because mom's getting deathly ill, and flies back to Houston, makes contact with her doctor, and goes to a little hospital over off I-10 in Houston because that's where he has medical rights at, that certain hospital. Almost missed it. And he said, "Bring her over here because I'm at this hospital. We'll see what's going on." Nobody knows about the Four Corners thing, and she's deathly ill. I mean, she was fine, 4 hours before she got sick, and now she's an invalid, can't do anything. And we thought it was some sort of weird flu. Well, they stick mom in this little room, of course, and they're running all kinds of tests, and people are freaking out. And her doctor's standing there the whole time, never left because she's close to death. She's at the point where they can't even move her because she's so fragile. And of course, start in on my father with 100 questions. And he's like, "Well, this morning we were up at the Four Corners convention, in da-da-da, whatever state they were in. And, there was a guy there, an Indian fella, Native American there that got really sick, and I think he's dead now, and she might have caught what he caught from them." So they didn't have a true quarantine in the facility that we're at, but they moved like 4 patients on either side, or they shut down the one side and moved everybody out. And it's just me, my father, a team of nurses, the head nurse, the head this, the head that. And they're like, "Well, we got to figure this shit out." And they're making phone calls the whole time, trying to figure out what the hell this illness is. And Hantavirus is what they originally called it, right? Turns out shitload of people had died. More people died than they actually said on the news, right? And so they start crunching the numbers of first noticing you're getting sick, the no temperature, the body shutting down, and all this other stuff. And then, like, the first indication I knew something was wrong, the doctor turned to the other doctor there at the hospital and said, well, why isn't she dead yet? If she has what they had, she should be dead. So they start running a bunch of tests, blood work, and all this shit, and got people barking and running out, doing all kinds of stuff, hooking her up to all kinds of machines and doing all the crazy stuff. And the doctor says, we need to know everybody you had contact with, your flight numbers, you know, everybody that's had contact with her since she came back into Houston. You got to write all this information down, and we got to get the information out there because this is really bad. And he says, well, we also need to know why the hell she's alive. And they thought, well, maybe because she's Anglo-Saxon blood and not Native American, that something might have been different. And one of the doctors happened to notice that the doctor that sent us there, that had medical rights there at that hospital, had prescribed her a drug for neurology that had quinine in it. And he's like, oh, this has quinine in it. And the doctor's like, yeah, but they've already tried quinine up there in the Four Corners, and that doesn't work. And he's like, well, she should be dead. She's dying, but she's not dead. You know, maybe it's the bounce effect of the drug. And a lot of people got pissed off. They're like, well, and our doctor, of course, and he turned to Bill and he says, look, we're just going to juice her the hell up with this drug and see what happens. He's like, at this point, there's nothing to lose. And Bill's like, fuck it, do it. So sure enough, she started coming around. I mean, almost instantaneously. And the guy's like, you know, I can't believe this. He's like, get on the phone with everybody. They found the drug in a liquefied form and fed it, whatever, through as fast as they can. He says, call up there, find out the 4 patients that are closest to death and just juice the hell out of them as much as they can with this drug. Plaquenil or some shit. Well, they kept us there for most of the night. I remember going home, or somebody came and got me, and the next day we go back up there, and the doctors never left. You know, they ate their meals there. They slept in the fucking hallway on bunks next to my father. I mean, a team of people just never left because it's a bad situation. And I get back over there somehow. I can't remember how. And the doctor's like, wow, you know, the mortality rate has dropped off 80% since we started giving them this drug. They didn't even call it Four Corners disease then. They called it the hantavirus. But that whole documentary of Native American traditions, oh, if it rains and snows heavy for 2 years, what it is the deer mice and the rodents around there, they get the pine nuts and they take it into their burrows. And the Native American Indians go down in there and scoop out the pine nuts and rinse them off and sell them because they're quite expensive. But they let the mice do the work, and when you reach in there and grab out the handful of pine nuts, you're also reaching into their den where they shit and piss and everything else a rodent would do. So there's cross-contamination. But this whole thing, it's feces in the air and all this other shit. No, it's direct contact with the pine nuts in the burrows of these deer mice. But, and other rodents out there. But they never said, oh, it was this weird drug, this 40, 50-year-old drug that got everybody out of it, and, you know, we can't explain why. No, they just said, well, we have this drug now to treat it. The doctors didn't know what the hell they were doing in Houston. They just noticed this one woman seems to live longer with it than most of the other people, and they said, well, this drug has quinine in it. Well, this drug might be effective. We can't explain why. It has nothing to do with anything we're doing, and the quinine is such low levels, it's more of a byproduct that they can't extract from it. Well, we'll just juice everybody up with this shit and go. That's why they had an 80% success rate on survival damn near overnight, is because some doctor just said, fuck it, let's juice everybody up with this shit and see what happens. It wasn't some big medical marvel of science and all this shit. Similar to hantavirus. Yes, it is. But the whole show is, oh, the Native Americans this and Native Americans that, and tradition says this. No, it's a fucking virus. It's a bacteria or cross contamination, whatever the fuck you want to call it. But they tried to make it seem like it was some big scientific thing. Once they knew what it was, and now they have different drugs for it, that brand new synthetics and high cost fucking pharmacy and shit. No, there's a 50-year-old fucking drug, 40-year-old drug that they didn't know would treat this and had no bearing on it whatsoever, but they can't charge for that. They had no idea the drug she was on is what was keeping her alive until they decided, one doctor just said, fuck it, you know, they're all going to be dead in an hour, let's juice them up with this shit and see what happens. And sometimes that's as basic as it fucking gets, is one guy just, well, what do we have to lose? They're all going to be dead in an hour anyhow. But that whole fucking show about the scientific and figuring it out, they knew what it was. It wasn't a bubonic plague and all that shit. They knew what it was from the beginning. They just didn't know how to treat people. But it wasn't some scientific breakthrough that saved, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of people in the Four Corners region. It was one doctor in Houston just saying, fuck it, let's juice the shit out of people and see if they live. And it's as hardcore and as truth as that. So when you're watching these shows, and this is just a tidbit of information, it's like Insight or whatever, you think these stories are big and grand and all this other stuff. What saves somebody is one doctor just scratching his ass and going, fuck it, what do we have to lose? Because it might be some 40-year-old drug that has nothing to do with anything, that somehow affects the body in a situation that they had no, what do you call that, when the side effects? They didn't know what they were treating. They just knew that one person was alive longer than the people that were there, and the only link that they had was this one drug that had a side effect of quinine in it, but that wasn't the reason why they gave them the drug. The reason why they gave them a drug is because some white woman's fucking dying on I-10, and she happened to live longer than the other people. So they started getting this drug in liquid form, juicing the shit out of people, and instantly 80% started living. It wasn't some scientist that was working in a lab trying to figure this shit out. They'll have years to do that and come up with all these brand new high-dollar drugs. No, it was just one doctor that said, we have to find the reason why it's not killing her as fast as it's killing everybody else. Is it because the bloodline is not a Native American Indian? And they're going through the list and shit of everything. And it was one doctor that just noticed that she was on a drug that contained a form of quinine, and just said, well, this drug doesn't treat this whatsoever, but let's just juice everybody up. So just a bit of information in the story that I was personally involved with, but it wasn't just people in Four Corners disease, it was people everywhere across this fucking nation, and sometimes other countries, because people like to take international flights. But it might not be some scientist sitting in a fucking lab somewhere trying to figure out what kills things moving around in a petri dish. It's a doctor that just says, fuck it, let's try this shit, because what else have we got to lose? That's the truth of it.